My name is Margaret. The day the letter arrived was the day the past finally caught up with me. It wasn't just a wedding invitation. It was a reminder of every time my father had introduced me as just a security guard, the grimace in his voice making it clear that in his eyes, I had fallen short. Holding that cream-colored card with its embossed gold letters announcing his third marriage, I knew I couldn't avoid the confrontation forever. If you've ever lived under the shadow of someone else's expectations, never feeling quite enough in their eyes, you'll understand why I ask you to subscribe. This story is about how life sometimes forces people to see us differently, whether they want to or not. My father, Richard Williams, had built his life like an empire, brick by brick, with status and money as the mortar. A senior investment banker in New York, he measured worth in polished offices, charity galas, and acquaintances who boasted about their stock portfolios. From the outside, his life gleamed like crystal. Inside our family, things were colder, harsher. My mother, Audrey, a kindergarten teacher of warmth and patience, finally left him when I was 12. She had tired of being little more than an accessory to his ambition. After that, my weekdays were full of peanut butter sandwiches and second-hand paperbacks in her modest apartment, while weekends were spent in Dad's gleaming penthouse overlooking Central Park. I learned quickly how to adapt, how to eat quietly in one world and make small talk in another. By 17, Dad had my future mapped out. Ivy League law school, a job at one of his friends' firms. When I told him I was enlisting in the Army, he looked at me as though I'd spat on the table. The military, he scoffed, dabbing his mouth with a linen napkin. People from our background don't enlist. They become officers if they serve at all. I went anyway. For years in the Army taught me discipline, leadership, and courage, the kind that comes from staring down situations far scarier than failing to meet a parent's expectations. When I came home, I studied criminal justice on the GI Bill, working nights as a campus security officer. By 29, I had risen through the ranks at Meridian Protection Services, one of the country's most respected private security firms. My specialty was threat assessment. I'd recently run security for an international diplomatic conference, and my supervisor had nominated me for an award. Not that any of it mattered to my father. To him, I was still just a security guard. So when that extravagant, embossed wedding invitation arrived, I nearly tossed it in the bin. But my friend Alicia convinced me otherwise. "Prove him wrong," she said, helping me choose a navy dress that felt dignified and strong. I wanted, though I hated to admit it, a chance for him to see me as I truly was. The rehearsal dinner was every bit the circus I had feared. Crystal centerpieces, ocean views, carefully assigned tables. When Dad introduced me to an older couple, he did it with the same dismissive shrug as always. "This is my daughter, Samantha. She's a security guard. Not a senior specialist, not an Army veteran, not a professional trusted to protect diplomats. Just a guard." I smiled through it, even when I overheard someone whisper, "With Richard's connections, she could have been anything." By dessert, I wanted to leave. Alicia texted back encouragement. "His opinion doesn't define your worth." Still, each dismissive introduction left me hollow. I stayed. Pride, maybe, or some quiet hope that tomorrow might be different. The next afternoon, under a sky so blue it felt staged, I noticed the first crack in the glossy facade. A catering worker who didn't quite fit. His jacket was too loose, his movements too sharp, his eyes scanning not like a server's but like a predator's. Soon I saw two more. Following them down a service corridor, I overheard whispers of $2 million in jewelry, and for more coming through the east entrance. The chill in my veins told me exactly what I was facing. A coordinated armed robbery. I alerted the police and the resort's head of security, Jenkins. But the timing was against us. Officers were 20 minutes out. The ceremony was already starting, and the suspects weren't waiting. They were positioning themselves, weapons under jackets, eyes sharp with intent. I had seconds to choose. Sound the alarm and risk panic, or stay low and intervene. When the first robber drew his weapon and fired into the air, ordering guests to hand over their valuables, chaos erupted. My father's new wife clutched his arm as another man shoved a gun in their faces, demanding watches and diamonds. That was when training took over. I moved quickly, disarming the leader with a precision strike, turning his own momentum against him. Gunfire followed, a burning pain tearing across my arm. But I didn't stop. I shielded guests, directed security, confronted a man holding a hostage in the kitchen, and ended it with nothing more than bruises, blood, and 7 suspects in handcuffs. By the time the police secured the scene, my father was staring at me with something I had never seen in his eyes before. And yet, when the paramedics stitched my arm, all I could manage to say was, "It's just part of the job, even if it is just being a security guard." The word stung him. I saw it in the flush of his face. What I didn't know then was that the next morning, when the news broadcast my name, my photo, and footage of me taking down armed criminals, that line between just a guard and what I truly was would vanish forever. By morning, the hotel room was full of light, and the kind of silence that makes you hear your own pulse. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Texts from Alicia with a string of "Are you okay?" and a measured voicemail from my mother, all pride and worry braided together. Switching on the television, I didn't recognize the person on the screen. The Chiron called me a security expert. Grainy cell phone clip showed a woman in a navy dress moving with purpose, and it took a breath or two to accept that she was me. Downstairs, brunch had been relocated to a smaller room, as if shrinking the venue could shrink what had happened. Guests hovered in clots, voices low, plates pushed around rather than eaten. When I stepped in, Eleanor crossed the room more quickly than I thought her stilettos would allow. "How's your arm?" she asked, eyes flicking to the bandage peeking under my jacket. "It'll heal," I said. "I heard the detectives wanted a follow-up. They're on their way." Her composure trembled and then righted itself. "Thank you," she added, and this time the words didn't sound rehearsed. I drifted toward the coffee, feeling heat through the thin paper cup, letting it anchor me. Stares gathered and split away. Polite smiles replaced yesterday's polite indifference. At a table near the window, my father was in full narrative, hands gesturing, voice pitched to Carrie. I caught the end of his sentence as I approached. "Always knew she had potential." The word lodged like a grain of sand. Potential. As if the past decade had been a waiting room. Before I could decide whether to ignore it or challenge it, a staffer touched my elbow. "The detectives are ready for you, ma'am." I followed her down the corridor, grateful for the reprieve. The interview was thorough and blessedly straightforward. We walked the timeline, the corridor, the storage room door. I described faces, shoes, the cadence of their scanning. They told me all 7 were in custody, and that a search of the van had tied the crew to other robberies up and down the coast. "You'll probably be asked to testify," the lead detective said, not unkindly. "And don't be surprised if the department reaches out about a commendation." "I'm not looking for a medal," I said. "Doesn't mean you didn't earn one," he replied. Back at brunch, the volume on the wall-mounted television crept up. A newscaster recapped the story and then rolled security footage I hadn't known existed. My body moving across the frame in clean lines, the leader's weapon sliding out of his grip, a blur of kitchen tile, and a hostage widening to relief. You could have heard a fork land on carpet. Someone breathed, "Oh my God," as if the screen had sprung a trap. Across the room, my father's hand loosened. His champagne flute tipped and fell, the neat little explosion of crystal unnaturally loud in the hush. For once, he didn't try to tidy the moment with a joke. He stared at the screen, then at me, and in that pivot, something old in his face cracked open. The applause started ragged and reluctant and then gathered into a tide. I didn't want it. I didn't know what to do with it. People stood and formed a circle without quite meaning to, questions rising like birds. Was it true I was a veteran? Hadn't Meridian handled that big gubernatorial event? How had I known what I was seeing? Pattern recognition, I said. You train your eyes and then you trust them. I gave as little as I could. No bravado, no movie gloss. Because the more they wanted to turn me into a story, the more I wanted to be a person. "Let me through." My father's voice came from behind the ring of shoulders. He reached for me, an arm across my back as if he'd done it 1,000 times. The contact felt borrowed. "The hero of the hour," he said to the room, and even he seemed to hear the hollowness in it. "Dad," I said quietly, "I have a train to catch." "Nonsense," he said too loudly. "People want to hear about your—" He swallowed, corrected himself. "About your work." A manager approached, murmuring about reporters waiting outside. I shook my head. "Please tell them I'm not giving a statement." When she left, my father looked startled. "You don't want the publicity?" This could be. It could be good. My career doesn't need a camera, I said. It needs competence. That's the point. He looked lost for a second, as if someone had taken away a tool he'd always counted on. Praise, polish, public narrative. Then at least. Could we talk privately? We found a corner beyond the buffet. A little alcove with a view of the water. On the television behind him, a security analyst pointed with a pen at my movements, narrating my decisions in sterile, admiring terms. My father kept glancing past me and then forcing his eyes back. I didn't understand what you do, he said finally. You didn't ask, I replied. He flinched. I thought you were working doors at clubs or malls. He stopped because the rest would cost him. I thought you were squandering your advantages. And if I had been, I asked, would that have made it acceptable to introduce me as a cautionary tale to your friends? He had the grace to shut his eyes. When he opened them, they looked older. You're right, he said. I've been dismissive. I've been cruel. Even if I thought I was being realistic. The word tasted wrong in his mouth. I don't get to airbrush that. We were interrupted by a murmur rising from the television. My firm's front steps, my boss speaking in a clipped, measured tone about training and standards and pride. Around us, forks lifted, paused, conversations thinned again. The room had turned into a theater by accident. I felt my face burn and wanted only to leave. I should go, I said. Please, he said, reaching and then pulling the hand back when he saw my bandage. Just later this afternoon. Give me an hour. Somewhere quiet. I hesitated and then nodded. Text me. In the hallway, my phone vibrated. Martin from Meridian. You all right? He asked without preamble. Stitched and sore. Good. We're issuing a statement and deflecting most of the press. Also, the CEO wants to see you when you're back. I'm not supposed to say it, but I'm saying it. There's a promotion on the table. You did the job we train for under conditions most people never face. I leaned against the wallpaper, head tipped back. I appreciate it, I said. I don't want to be a mascot. You won't, he said. You'll build something. He let that hang there, something, and then signed off. Late afternoon, the sky turned a paler blue and the resort's top-floor bar sat mostly empty. The ocean turned to hammered glass. My father had already ordered 2 highballs, sweating on coasters. He pushed one toward me. Club soda with lime, he said. I remember you don't drink when you're on. I took a sip and let the tartness cut through the day. We sat in a pocket of quiet until he spoke. I watched the footage again, he said. Then I watched a breakdown from a security professional who explained it all. How you read the room, how you positioned yourself, how you used your body as both shield and leverage. His hands opened, and it was like being told a story about a stranger. Except it wasn't. It was you. That's the problem, I said. I've been right here all along. He nodded slowly. I wanted a version of you that fit the life I understood. Prestigious degrees, partnerships, champagne toasts. He grimaced. I told myself it was about giving you options. Really, it was about control. I didn't let him off the hook. Not entirely. It was also about respect, I said. Or the lack of it. He took his first sip as if bracing. When that man had a gun to my head, he said, his voice very even. The only thing I could think was that I had spent years measuring the wrong things. He looked out at the water, then back at me. You have a life built on purpose, on competence, on service. That is a kind of success I never taught myself to recognize. Silence, but not uncomfortable. The kind that lets words sink in. I can't rewrite those years, he said. I can only say that I am sorry and ask whether you'll let me try to know you as you are. Not as I insisted you be. I breathed in slow, the lime bright in the air. That starts with questions, I said. Not speeches. All right, he said, almost a smile. Then my first question. What do you love most about your work? I told him about threat patterns and the satisfaction of a plan executed cleanly. About the quiet relief of an event that ends uneventfully because you did your job, so well no one noticed. I talked about the way a room can hum with unseen currents and how training is really about teaching your mind to listen to them. I told him about the people, my team, how they watch one another's blind spots. He listened, really listened. No interruptions, no correction. When I finished, he drew a breath. "I've been telling a story about you for years," he said. "Yesterday, I finally heard yours. We didn't hug. We didn't sweep the past into a corner with a tidy reconciliation. We sat there, two stubborn people in a bar the color of winter light, and let the possibility of a different future take its first uncertain shape." As we stood to leave, he glanced at the bandage and winced. "You were shot," he said, like he was just catching up to the fact. "You were shot protecting a room full of people who barely knew your name." "It was a graze," I said. He shook his head. "You and your mother," he said softly, "always minimizing what you survive." In the elevator down, my phone buzzed again. Alicia this time. "You okay? Do I need to come get you?" I smiled and typed back that I was all right, that I would call her from the train, that I had a lot to tell her. I stepped into the lobby and caught my reflection in the dark gloss of the doors. Hair pulled back, jacket sitting oddly over the bandage, tired eyes that didn't look defeated. Outside, the air had the clean taste it gets after a storm. For the first time in a long time, I felt the difference between being seen and being watched. The rest, promotions and ceremonies, quiet dinners and harder truths, the slow work of building something honest, waited somewhere just ahead. But that evening, as the car pulled up, all I let myself hold was the simplest fact. I had done my job. I had done it well, and the person who most needed to witness that finally had. In the weeks that followed, life shifted in ways I hadn't anticipated. My firm promoted me to lead a new division on event security. The police awarded me a Civilian Bravery Medal. And for the first time in years, my father began showing up not with critiques, but with curiosity, asking about my work and even attending a training demonstration I ran. It wasn't instant redemption, but little by little, the distance between us shrank, replaced by something real. And though I knew scars, both visible and unseen, would remain, I finally understood that my worth had never depended on his recognition, only on the integrity with which I lived my own life.